Today I'm going to be sharing with you 7 Instant Pot tricks. Hi, I'm Karen Peterson and I like to share Instant Pot stuff with you every week here on YouTube. I am almost to 100,000 followers, so if you would push that subscribe button, I would so appreciate it. Once we get to 100,000, I'm going to give away one of these awesome aprons and one of my new cookbooks that will be coming out later this month. I'm going to be sharing with you 7 tricks that I have figured out along the way of my Instant Pot journey. The first one is using the 3-quart liner inside of a 6-quart pot for pot and pot cooking. Now, if you don't know what pot and pot cooking is, I'm going to link up here to a video that talks about all about pot and pot cooking, exactly what it is and how you do it. But if you are familiar with it, you'll know that you need a vessel to cook inside your other vessel. So you can use a 3-quart liner, plop it right down in there to do pot and pot cooking, and it works so good. Now, some of you might be saying, well, I don't have a 3-quart. You can buy this non-stick 3-quart liner on Amazon for about 15 bucks. I'll link to it in the description below. And another thing that I love, if you don't have yet, is this. If you're going to be doing anything pot and pot, like cheesecake or casseroles or whatever, you'll need one of these. They are the best. So I'll link to that too if you want. Tip number 2 is using a controlled release. So if you started using your Instant Pot and reading about it, you've probably been introduced to what a natural pressure release is and what a quick release is. And if you don't know what those things are, I will link to my video right up there on what they are and how to do them. But did you know that there's kind of an in-between release, and it's called a control release? I'm going to share with you why you would do the control release and then how to do it. So a controlled release basically just means you're flipping the valve back and forth from sealing to venting, letting out a little steam at a time. The reason you'd want to do this is if you are cooking something that you want to stop cooking quickly, but when you do the quick release, stuff spews out. And this could be the case for like oatmeal, grains, foamy like dried beans. Sometimes the foam kind of comes out of the valve. Maybe a hot soup or something like that, something that's really fills the pot to the top. This is equivalent to what it's like when you open a 2-liter bottle of soda and it starts spurting out all of a sudden, and you quickly close it and the fizz goes down, and then you open it again and kind of keep going back and forth. It's kind of the same thing as when you open your pot like this. This one is a Lux, and so I'm going to show you how to do a controlled release on the Lux. So you can see there's a sealing, there's venting on either side. So what you do is you just move from sealing to venting and back and forth. And you just let out a little pressure at a time until all the pressure's out. So like I said, this would be used in any case that you want to quickly stop the cooking process, but that you don't want all that stuff to start spurting out and make a mess in your kitchen. Number 3, after doing a natural pressure release, you'll see what happens. Come over here. You can see that it starts counting up, which just means that the pressure cooking cycle is over, and it will start counting up and it will switch to keep warm. You can see the button of keep warm is on, illuminated right now. So a lot of people will ask me, do I need to unplug the pot or turn it off while it's doing the natural pressure release, or is it okay that the keep warm button is on? Doesn't that make it hotter or cook it? And the answer is it doesn't matter. You can unplug your pot if you'd like, or you can just let it stay here, because as long as there's pressure in the pot, the keep warm cycle is not on. It's not a pressure cooking cycle, the keep warm function isn't, and so it won't kick on until the pot completely loses pressure. So even though the button is illuminated, it doesn't matter. It's the same exact thing as if the pot was unplugged, as it is losing pressure. Now once it does lose all pressure, then you can decide if you want the keep warm button on or off. If you're serving right away, or if you're not going to be there for a couple hours and you want the food to stay warm while you're out and about doing errands or whatever. The 4th thing that I wanted to tell you about is doubling recipes, and I get this question all the time, is I'm doubling this recipe, do I need to change the cook time? And a lot of times people think, oh, this is a bigger recipe. Do I need to cook it longer? And the answer is no, you don't need to cook it longer. You'll cook it the same amount of time as if it was just the normal recipe. And the reason that is that pressure cooking takes the same amount of time for one piece of rice as it does for 1,000 pieces of rice. Pressure cooking is determined by the thickness of the food and how long it takes to cook to the middle of that food. So if you double a soup recipe, for example, or you double a pasta recipe, for example, keep the same cooking time as stated in the recipe. If you're doubling the thickness of the food, let's say you have a sweet potato that's this size versus a sweet potato that's this size, when you have the bigger sweet potato, you're going to want to increase the cooking time in that case, but otherwise, no, the cooking time remains the same. Number 5, finding recipes. I will get emails all the time of, do you have low carb recipes? Where are your gluten-free recipes? I need to find a chicken and rice recipe. And I tell them it's super easy. You just go to my site, 365daysofcrockpot.com, and I have a filter feature where you can filter by whatever you're looking for, whether that's a certain diet or a certain type of meat that you want, or healthy or meatless, or whatever you're looking for, you can find it that way. And I have a video up here that explains and shows you exactly how to filter those recipes. Number 6, a lot of people will ask me, why don't you use the preset buttons that are on your Instant Pot? If you'll notice when you get your Instant Pot, you'll see a lot of different buttons. You'll just see the soup, meat, cake, egg. I mean, every Instant Pot is a little bit different, but they're gonna have these different preset buttons. And you'll notice in 99% of my recipes, I just say press the manual button or the pressure cook button, and then set the time to 5 minutes or whatever I say. So the pot isn't smart enough to know what's in there. So it doesn't know that you're only cooking beef stew pieces that are this size versus a whole roast that's this size. And so what I like to do is control the amount of time instead of using these preset buttons that are on there. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. You can definitely use them. Basically, it's just the manual button or the pressure cook button set to a certain amount of time. It's doing the exact same thing. It doesn't really cook any differently, whether you use the meat button to cook a cake or you use the beans button to cook meat. It's all the same. So it's just the amount of time that they're putting in. So that's why I don't use those buttons. My final tip for you today is how to cube chicken breasts when you're using them in a recipe. I have a lot of recipes that are like pasta recipes, for example. My Instant Pot Tuscan chicken pasta. And it calls for cutting up the chicken into bite-sized pieces. And what I found that is if you cut the chicken across the grain, then you're gonna have more tender little pieces of bite-sized pieces of chicken. You can see that the grain in this chicken breast is going, I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of like that. It's these striated fibers that are going this way. What I like to do to get the most tender pieces of chicken is to cut across the grain initially. So what I will do to cut the chicken into cubes is cut it like this. So I'm going across the grain. If I was going with the grain, I would go this way. And then I'll take that slice that I just sliced and I will cut it into pieces this way. Now, if I was smart, I would have thrown this chicken into the freezer for about 10-15 minutes before I wanted to cut it, because then it makes it even easier to cut because it's just a little tiny bit frozen. But when you're cutting up chicken for a recipe into cubes, that is the way that I like to do it, and I find that it stays so much more tender. You're gonna notice a huge difference. I'm gonna link to several recipes below that use cubed chicken in recipes. One is the Tuscan chicken pasta. Another one is the chicken stroganoff that is so tasty. I know you're gonna love it, so make sure to go and visit that link and get that recipe. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. Let's get to 100,000 followers. That's gonna be a lot of fun. And you can find all of these tips in written form. I will link to it in the description below if you'd like to read these tips and print them off. Thanks again. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.